Your research is worthless, my brother announced as he took over my laboratory. 5 years later, when my miracle drug saved millions, he discovered too late whose name was on the patent. The boardroom fell silent as my brother Victor pushed my research portfolio aside. The direction of Keller Pharmaceuticals needs to change, he declared, standing at the head of the table where our father had sat for 30 years before his death last month. Eleanor's research division has consumed millions in funding with nothing marketable to show for it. I maintained my composure as 12 board members turned to look at me. After 15 years leading the company's research division, I was being publicly dismissed by my younger brother, the newly appointed CEO. My team is 6 months away from completing clinical trials on KL237, I said, keeping my voice steady. The preliminary results show remarkable efficacy against treatment-resistant infections. 6 months away, always 6 months away, Victor interrupted with a dramatic sigh. Meanwhile, our competitors are releasing actual products. The board agrees it's time for a change in leadership. I looked around the table. These men and women had watched me grow up, had seen me earn my PhD at 23, had celebrated when my early research brought Keller Pharmaceuticals into the spotlight. Now they avoided my eyes, their silence confirmation of their betrayal. The vote was taken this morning, Victor continued, sliding a document across the table. Your division is being restructured under Dr. Martin Chen. You're welcome to stay on as a staff researcher, of course. Martin Chen, my former assistant who had mysteriously transferred to Victor's corporate development team last year, taking copies of my research notes with him. Now he would lead my division, my team, my life's work. I'll need time to consider my options, I said, gathering my papers with hands I refused to let tremble. Of course, Victor smiled with false generosity. Take the weekend. Oh, and we'll need you to vacate your private laboratory by Monday. Martin needs the space. As I left the boardroom, I heard Victor resume his presentation about the new direction for Keller Pharmaceuticals, a direction that would erase our father's legacy of prioritizing medical innovation over quick profits, and erase me along with it. In my laboratory, I locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing myself a moment of raw emotion. This lab had been my sanctuary since I was a teenager, first as my father's eager assistant, later as the research director carrying on his mission to develop treatments for the most challenging medical conditions. Victor had never understood this calling. 8 years younger than me, he had studied business while I pursued biochemistry. When I was developing our first breakthrough medications, he was networking at business schools, while I worked late into the night on research protocols. He cultivated connections with board members, particularly those who found it difficult to respect a female research director, regardless of her qualifications. I moved to my computer and entered a complex password, accessing files that existed nowhere else in the company's systems. For 3 years, I had been working on a parallel research track, one that Victor and the board knew nothing about. My phone vibrated with a text from Diana Chen, Martin's sister and my true research partner at Meridian Biotech, a small company we had quietly established using my mother's inheritance. Is it happening? Her message read. Yes, I replied. Monday is extraction day. Diana's response came instantly. Operation Nightshade is ready. I smiled for the first time that day. Victor thought he was seizing control of my precious research. He had no idea that the most valuable elements had already been secured elsewhere. That weekend, while Victor celebrated his triumph at his Hamptons estate, I worked methodically in my laboratory, downloading backups of my crucial data, removing specific components from our prototype synthesizers, and carefully documenting the condition of everything I would leave behind. On Sunday night, as I packed the last of my personal items, Victor called. Eleanor, he began without preamble, I forgot to mention that your clearance for the secure storage facility has been revoked. Whatever samples you've collected belong to the company. Of course, I replied calmly, everything that belongs to Keller Pharmaceuticals will remain with Keller Pharmaceuticals. Good, he said, sounding slightly disappointed that I hadn't argued. Martin will continue your research, with some necessary modifications to make it commercially viable. After hanging up, I removed a small cooling case from a hidden compartment beneath my desk, a compartment our father had built decades ago to protect his most sensitive work from corporate espionage. Inside were culture samples of the rare fungal strain that was the foundation of KL237, samples that had never been logged in the company's official inventory. These cultures technically didn't belong to Keller Pharmaceuticals because they had never officially existed. Monday morning, I surrendered my access badges to security and carried my personal belongings through the lobby under the watchful eyes of the guards Victor had stationed there. Several of my researchers stood nearby, looking uncomfortable and apologetic. Dr. Keller, one of them called as I reached the door. We didn't know about the reorganization. We never wanted. It's all right, James, I assured him. Science is always full of unexpected developments. Sometimes they lead to remarkable discoveries. As I loaded my car, Martin emerged from the building, already wearing the lab coat with the research director's emblem that had been mine for 15 years. Eleanor, he said, having dropped the Dr. Keller now that he outranked me, I want you to know I'll take good care of your research. I smiled. I'm sure you'll get exactly the results you deserve, Martin. 5 years passed. In that time, Keller Pharmaceuticals struggled through a series of embarrassing failures. The research that Victor and Martin thought was nearly complete turned out to have critical gaps they couldn't resolve. The samples in secure storage proved inconsistent and non-viable. The detailed protocols they had weren't producing the results my preliminary reports had promised. Meanwhile, Meridian Biotech remained a small but growing presence in the pharmaceutical industry. Diana and I, along with a carefully selected team of researchers who shared our vision, continued our work away from Victor's interference. We operated from a converted warehouse laboratory that lacked the gleaming sophistication of Keller Pharmaceuticals but hummed with genuine innovation. In our third year, we achieved the breakthrough that had been my goal for nearly a decade, a novel antibiotic, effective against the most resistant bacterial strains that had begun to render existing medications useless. We called it Novalis 7, though I privately thought of it as KL237 perfected. Clinical trials proceeded rapidly given the urgent need for new antibiotic options. Hospitals dealing with treatment-resistant infections reported extraordinary success rates. Medical journals published our research. Meridian Biotech became the focal point of excitement in the pharmaceutical world. Through it all, I maintained my privacy. As the majority shareholder and chief research officer, I made certain my name appeared on the patents and publications, but I avoided press conferences and interviews, letting Diana serve as the public face of our company. My brother, I knew, rarely paid attention to the scientific community's publications or the names on patent applications. Then came the global health crisis that changed everything. A particularly virulent bacterial infection began spreading rapidly across multiple countries, resistant to every standard antibiotic. Healthcare systems worldwide were overwhelmed as conventional treatments failed. The World Health Organization declared an international emergency and put out an urgent call for alternative treatments. Novalis 7 was the only medication showing consistent effectiveness against the pathogen. Meridian Biotech immediately scaled up production and made our medication available at cost to affected regions. Within weeks, recovery rates soared wherever Novalis 7 was administered. We were hailed as medical heroes, saving potentially millions of lives. That was when the pharmaceutical giants came calling, including Keller Pharmaceuticals. I was reviewing production logistics when Diana entered my office, her expression a mixture of amusement and anticipation. "Your brother is in the lobby," she announced, with Martin Chen and 2 board members. "They're requesting an urgent meeting with Meridian's leadership regarding a mutually beneficial partnership opportunity." I leaned back in my chair, the moment I had both dreaded and anticipated finally at hand. "I suppose it's time, then." "Are you ready?" Diana asked. "I've been ready for 5 years," I replied, standing to straighten my lab coat, which bore the simple embroidery Dr. E. Keller, Founder Chief Research Officer. The conference room we used for important meetings was modest compared to Keller Pharmaceuticals' elaborate boardroom, but its simplicity spoke to our company's focus on substance over appearance. I took my seat at the head of the table, with Diana and our executive team flanking me, as Victor and his entourage were shown in. Victor hadn't changed much physically in 5 years, though new lines of stress marked his face. He strode in with the same confidence he had always projected, then stopped abruptly when he saw me. "Eleanor?" he faltered, looking from me to Diana and back again. "What are you doing here?" "I believe the better question," I replied calmly, "is what you are doing here, Victor. This is a meeting requested by Keller Pharmaceuticals with Meridian Biotech's leadership. As Meridian's founder and chief research officer, I'm exactly where I should be." The blood drained from Victor's face as understanding dawned. Behind him, Martin Chen looked equally stunned. The board members, whom I recognized as 2 who had been particularly supportive of Victor's coup, seemed confused. You're behind Meridian Biotech?" Victor managed to ask. "But you're a researcher, not a businessperson?" I finished for him. I learned quite a bit watching you over the years, Victor, including the importance of controlling one's intellectual property. I gestured to the chairs. Please, sit. You wanted to discuss a partnership opportunity. They sat. Victor still struggling to compose himself. Martin frantically whispered something to him, likely explaining exactly who had been behind the miracle drug that was now making headlines worldwide. We, Keller Pharmaceuticals, would like to propose a distribution partnership for Novalis 7, Victor finally said, his business training taking over. Our global infrastructure could help get your medication to patients much faster than your current capabilities allow. An interesting proposal, I nodded. Though our production capacity is expanding rapidly, we prioritized accessibility over profit margins, which has accelerated regulatory approvals worldwide. Keller Pharmaceuticals can offer significant financial incentives, one of the board members interjected. The potential synergies between our organizations would certainly benefit Keller. I finished politely. Your stock has dropped 60% over the past 3 years, while research failures have eroded confidence in your development pipeline. Meanwhile, Meridian now holds patents on what analysts are calling the most important pharmaceutical breakthrough of the decade. Victor's jaw tightened. Eleanor, whatever grievances you may hold about past business decisions, surely we can set those aside for the greater good. This is about saving lives. Indeed it is, I agreed, which is precisely why Meridian has already committed to making Novalis 7 available at minimal cost to healthcare systems worldwide. We've signed agreements with manufacturers in 12 countries to ensure production meets global needs. At minimal cost? Victor repeated, aghast. But the profit potential was never my primary concern. I interrupted, just as it wasn't Father's. Keller Pharmaceuticals was founded on the principle that scientific advancement and human well-being should drive our industry, not quarterly profit reports. I slid a folder across the table. However, I am prepared to offer Keller Pharmaceuticals a limited licensing agreement for North American distribution, with strict price controls and distribution requirements. Victor opened the folder, his expression darkening as he reviewed the terms. These conditions would barely cover our distribution costs. It's practically a charitable arrangement. Consider it an opportunity to rebuild Keller Pharmaceuticals' reputation, I suggested, and a chance to honor Father's legacy, which you've spent 5 years dismantling. The board won't accept these terms, Victor said, though his voice lacked conviction. One of the board members, who had been studying me with growing respect, cleared her throat. Actually, the terms are considerably more generous than anything else currently available to us. I believe the board would view this as a lifeline, given our current position. Victor closed the folder, his knuckles white. I need to consult with our legal team. Of course, I said, you have 48 hours to accept or decline. After that, we'll move forward with our alternative distribution arrangements. As they prepared to leave, Victor lingered behind, waiting until the others had exited the conference room. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. That you were building this? That your research had continued? I considered my brother, the boy who had followed me around our father's lab as a child, asking endless questions, before ambition and insecurity had turned him against me. Would you have listened, Victor? Or would you have tried to claim ownership of this work too? He had no answer for that. The irony, I continued, is that if you had supported my research instead of undermining it, both Keller Pharmaceuticals and Meridian Biotech could have developed Novalis 7 together. Father always intended for us to be partners, combining your business acumen with my scientific expertise. It's not too late, he offered, a desperate edge to his voice. We could still merge the companies, create something stronger together, restore the Keller name to its former glory. I shook my head. The Keller name is doing quite well at Meridian. My terms are in the folder, Victor. That's the only partnership I'm offering. After he left, Diana returned to the conference room. That went well, she observed with a slight smile, though I thought you might be tempted by his last-minute appeal to family loyalty. 5 years ago, I might have been, I admitted, but I've learned an important lesson about the difference between true partnership and exploitation. Victor hasn't. The following day, Keller Pharmaceuticals board voted to accept our licensing terms, overriding Victor's objections. 3 months later, Victor resigned as CEO, replaced by one of the board members who had witnessed our confrontation. 6 months after that, Keller Pharmaceuticals re-established its research division with a renewed commitment to its founding principles. I never returned to my old laboratory. My work at Meridian Biotech continued, developing treatments for diseases others considered too rare or complex to be profitable. We structured our patents and pricing to ensure accessibility, building a different kind of pharmaceutical company, one that measured success and lives improved rather than merely dollars earned. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't destroying what someone took from you, but building something better in its place, something they can see but never claim as their own. Victor had taken my laboratory, my title, and my place in our father's company, but in doing so, he had unknowingly set me free to create something far more valuable, a legacy entirely my own.